Hey, Matt Sitter here, CEO of AFN. At AFN, we believe that change is where opportunity happens, and the best way to find opportunity in change is a network that's diverse in experience, expertise, and perspective. One of the ways that we like to bring that experience, expertise, and perspective forward is through fireside chats. And today we've got Ben Clayton with us. He is CEO of Life Flight Network. He had an 18-year career with some extra time in there uh, in the Marine Corps. He's done all the different jobs that many of the people at his company do. He was a pilot for a long time and now is a tremendous leader of his company. Ben, great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt.
So first question, I'm very curious on you did something for a while, which a lot of people would argue is a pretty fun activity, flying some helicopters. Do you miss flying at all?
I get that question pretty frequently, actually. Kind of, yeah, but I mean the business stuff is fun too. It's just a different it's just a different kind of challenge every day. But yeah, flying, I love flying.
And do you ever go up for fun with the guys?
I have. I made an attempt in like 2020 to go fly again, and then I just don't have the time to do it safely and be
Sure.
feel proficient. So.
Totally makes sense. So, as looking at your career progression, you spent time in operations at Life Flight prior to moving to the CEO position, in addition to being a pilot there to begin with. When you moved into CEO role from a heavy operations perspective, what surprised you in that transition?
There's just, I think it's a bigger picture. So when you're doing ops, you can kind of get into the nitty-gritty details of things. But I think you have to step up a little bit and take a broader view when you step into the CEO role. And then it's challenging too because you have somebody who's now stepping into the COO role below you that you've already had, and they'll do things a little bit differently, but that's not wrong. It's just different. And so, but that becomes a challenge too. And you have to force yourself to not get too involved in somebody else's thing just because you're familiar with it.
When you were doing the COO role, was that primarily internally focused?
Yeah, a lot of, basically anything that, if it was flying, so aviation, maintenance, dispatch, comm center. So all of those kind of internal pieces, how to make everything operate every day. And then, of course, fleet transitions, and that would be the external part, buying helicopters, selling helicopters, airplanes, all of those things.
So in your job of being externally focused as a CEO, you got to deal probably more with the board now. You got to deal with, the payers, things like that. How did you get yourself geared up to be able to effectively manage some of those external relationships?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the first thing I did was really dive into the financials and understand the financials of the company. But then the external, I was aware of all the things that were going on. I just wasn't having to do it. But I found myself spending a lot more time in Washington, D.C., and a lot more time dealing with external hospitals, but government affairs type stuff in my role now, which sometimes it's fun, and a lot of times it's not. But
But you got to do it.
yeah.
When we're thinking about your transition into the CEO role, you spent a lot of time thinking about leadership in your prior career. What were some of the lessons from your career that were really easy to take into the CEO role? And you're like, hey, I know some of these things that I want to do right away.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is focusing on the people and making sure that they feel supported. One of the lessons I took early in my Marine Corps career, I was newly married. My wife was finishing up her grad school at University of Florida. I just finished flight school, and so I was up in North Carolina. And then she got diagnosed with a skin cancer. And so I didn't really know what to do. I was real new in the Marines. They were trying to get all of us trained up to get to our fleet squadron so we get to Iraq. But I talked to the XO and I said, hey, can I, take leave to go down and, while she needs to have this procedure done. And he was like, just go. And he put me on what's called permissive TAD, temporary additional duty, didn't charge leave, and just said, hey, come back when you can. Just let me know. And so wrote an open ticket basically to go take care of my family. And that was really impactful for me. And I later found out that something similar had happened to him. His wife had been in a very serious accident. And they had put him on the same thing for like 6 months and just said, hey, your appointed place of duty is at the hospital with your wife. And so I think taking care of those people is really important. And if you take care of them, they'll take care of you in the long run. And it just makes it a lot better place to work. So that was kind of the easy lesson and what I really wanted to put in place. And we've seen that have really positive effects for us. Morale tends to be very high. And one of the indicators that I use there is turnover. And our turnover rate is exceedingly low. It's like 10 or 11%, something like that, which for our industry is phenomenal. And so we're really proud of that.
That's great. And so when you're thinking about, I mean, it's one thing to be able to do something like that as a leader. It's just like, yeah, go off and do it. How do you make that a part of your culture, this idea of taking care of one another?
That's a good question. You know, at first people would ask permission for things. When I stepped into the role, people would say, hey, I want to do this for this person. And then it would take a long time I think we had somebody that had a family emergency. And so somehow it came to me to see if they could let them go home from the shift, and it would close the base. But I was just like, hey, guys, it didn't need to come to me. Like, just take care of it. And then, you know, we'll sort it out later. But just making sure that those leaders feel empowered to do what they think is best at the time. If it's the wrong decision, we'll sort that out later. But you know, if as long as you're trying to take care of your people, ultimately, you know, that's what we're looking for. And so just trying to inculcate that idea throughout the organization.
So, you know, as you're moving into this role, you know, being a COO, you know, you're running around, there's all sorts of things that you just got to take care of. You know, you're making sure that you got the equipment, you're making sure that everyone's working the right way, things like that. Your metrics for effectiveness change when you are in the CEO role. How did you think about measuring your own effectiveness when you got into this role so you can say like, hey, I understand that I'm doing the job that I want to do?
That's a good question. A lot of that probably ultimately comes back to the financials and finances, right? If you're taking care of business, then you can pay the staff, you can buy the equipment. And so I think just, you know, stepping back, looking at things, you know, where do we want the company to be in the 5 to 10 year range, as opposed to the 6 month to 1 year range. You know, it's really the strategic thinking, the forward thinking, and thinking about, you know, where do we want to be? And then what are the things that the guidance I need to give, not the specific tasks, but the guidance to the other leaders to make sure we can get there.
One of the things that, you know, you said in the prior question I asked was about the regrettable attrition going way down for you. What do you think are some of the knock-on effects that the company has enjoyed as a result of that? Like, how has the tenor of the company changed? And maybe if you could just give us an idea of how regrettable attrition has changed from, you know, when you came on board and you said, hey, this is something I want to fix. How much of an improvement did you see?
We saw quite a bit of improvement, and that the caveat there is like, this is all like during pandemic. So there's a lot of, you know, who knows what, I mean, the pandemic was crazy, particularly in healthcare. Yeah. You know, and so really hard to get a fair measure, you know, from before I stepped into now. But I do know that morale seems to be high. And as far as the follow-on effects, you know, if you have people that have been there for a long time, they're better at their job. They've seen the things before, and the mission that we're doing is out there saving people and helping people every day. And, you know, if we can be just a little bit more efficient because we have a lot of longevity, we're going to help more people. And if, you know, you've got nurses and paramedics that have been in the company for 10 years, they've seen a lot of things, and so they just have a lot of experience that is helpful for our patients. And so the same thing with pilots. And you know, I remember I did a flight when I was a new float pilot, and I was at a base, and I'd only been in the company maybe 6 months or something, and I got a flight request, and the ceilings were at 1,700 feet or something, and I got a flight request to a specific location, and I looked at it and it looked like on all the weather that, yep, I can do that. And I took off and I got about halfway there and it's like, nope, I can't do it. So I came back and one of the old timers was at the base and he's like, oh, you're going to that LZ? Nope, you need 2,100 feet to get there. You can't do that at 1,700 feet. You know, you should know that. And it's like, but he'd been there for 20 years doing those flights, you know? Yeah. So those little efficiencies, with longevity get developed, and it's important.
So I think to your point, you started out as a pilot at Life Flight. Um, when you're thinking about building leadership from within the organization, how do you do that effectively, and how do you help people actually get promoted inside of Life Flight?
Yeah, well, with our low turnover right now, it becomes hard to get promoted at Lifelight because we don't have any leaders leaving, and so it becomes difficult. Every time we do have an opening, though, we'll get tons of applicants. I think for the COO position, I had 6 or 7 qualified internal candidates and like 80 external candidates. And so we went internal, but I had to tell like 6 people, hey, like you would be great at this, but I'm going to pick this person. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be a challenge, I think, for leaders when you come from the line, and you move your way up. It's how do you, because it's a different relationship at that point, than you have. That said, I still have people that I talk to all the time. One of the nurses I used to work with stopped by yesterday just to say hello. Stopped by the office, and on her, she was coming off of vacation or something. But so it's good to have those relationships, but it does change a little bit. But I think if you've got a good reputation, and if you've demonstrated that you care while you're their peer, when you move into a leadership role, they're good about it, and they will understand that, hey, there's certain things I can't tell them, or there's certain decisions that I might have to make that they may not like, but the grace that they give when you do have to do that is good, as long as they know that you care.
Well, and so you have a lot of team members that are highly specialized, right? You've got pilots who spent years building up their expertise. You've got nurses, you've got physicians, you've got the medical crews on it. There's different types of motivation that you've got to be able to bring to the table for them. They don't have as much experience with the operations overall of the company. So how do you motivate the highly specialized skill staff? And I would say second to that is, how do you help them understand how the company's doing as well?
One of the advantages that we have is that everybody that here is all the same team. We're all employed by Lifelight Network. So some companies that are similarly positioned, they'll have one company that controls the pilots and mechanics, a different company that controls the medical crews, and so that can create some frictions. And so we don't have that. So if we can give the vision, and the vision is ensuring everybody has access to care, and we try to make sure that the entire team, no matter if they're in accounting or parts, or in the dispatch center, the comm center, no matter who they are, they're all supporting that ultimate goal of ensuring that we can provide access to care. And then just providing the overall vision of like, hey, this is where we're going. We're likely going to grow based on the needs of the communities, but we are here to support the communities, and just keep reiterating that message that we're here for the people, we're here for the communities. And it's easier, we're a not-for-profit, so that makes it easier too, because that's, it's, we don't have shareholders that we're trying to spin off money to, right? That's not our goal.
Right, right. No, I think it's a great mission for everyone to be able to get behind. So that's a nice thing for you to be able to stand on.
Hard to be cynical about what we do.
Right, right. So thinking about air medical transit, I think there's all sorts of interesting elements to what you guys do. Even if we think about the demographic shifts within the United States, and a lot of the world, people are getting older, right? So
Yeah.
likelihood demand for your service will go up. You got people moving from rural areas into the cities. That means that services in rural areas are, becoming less common. How do you think about the challenges in air medical transit that you're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, there's huge challenges, particularly in our super rural areas. When I go to DC, they call us the frontier states, and we're in Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Montana, and Nevada. So a lot of these rural areas, with the pressures on the American healthcare system, have reduced services, and that makes our services more critical. A good example of that is in Baker City, Oregon. They had their maternity clinic and it closed. And so there's no maternity care within lots of miles, and so we become more important there. And we see that across our area. At the same time, we have payers, insurance companies that are paying less and less or trying to. We have, Medicare and Medicaid are chronically under reimbursed. So we, lose money on every single Medicaid, Medicare transport that we do, and that's probably 2/3 of our business. And then the commercial payers are putting additional pressures on and trying to, pay as little as they can and hold on to money as long as they can. So oftentimes it'll take us 6 months or a year for an insurance company to finally pay what they owe.
Wow, so decreased amount of revenue coming in, but the demand for the services is going up at the same time.
Yeah, and not to mention, inflation, fuel costs, salary increases, so that our costs go up, and we have nobody to really pass that on to. So it makes for a challenge. One senator, I was in DC, and I was explaining how the business works to him, and he kind of looks at me and he says, "Wow, your business model is terrible." It's like,
Thanks. Yeah.
thank you, appreciate that. But we're here to help the communities, and we're a vital resource. We're a vital part of the 911 system, and so we have to be there. But it does make it challenging to get appropriate reimbursement.
Yeah. So I mean, what would be the alternative that people would pose? What can they do if you didn't have you guys? What would happen?
There would be people would die. I mean, there's no other way to put that, or have worse outcomes. You think about a stroke patient, for example. Time is brain, and so for us to get there quickly in a helicopter, we can guarantee or help them maintain as much brain as they can, and then have a quality of life afterwards. If we weren't there, they would either die or have a terrible quality of life after the fact.
Yeah. Well, and so you mentioned like being a nonprofit, you got all these people who are working for the same company, you all have the same mission, that you're working together on these things, you don't have separate companies, helping on different parts of it. The other models that are out there for it, how are you capable of competing against those? Like if it's a private equity driven model or things like that are happening elsewhere in medical flight.
I mean, the important thing to understand is even the other companies that are profit driven, we're all here to serve the same purpose, right? So I work closely with people from those companies, and they all, they're all there to serve the people. So I'm not denigrating them in any way. It's just, we have a little bit more leeway, I would say, to kind of do things our way to make sure that we can control our clinical quality. We can work with our hospital owners to work within their quality systems, or we actually oftentimes will help in their quality systems, and we can focus really a lot of energy there. And then it's just, as far as competition, we want to look for where we're needed, and we make sure that we put bases where they are needed. And we try to be proactive about that. And we're very plugged in with the communities. When we find a hospital or we find a community that is in need, then we look at it and we'll proactively put a base in. And I don't have a specific target that I need in order, like, well, if it's not a 30% margin, then we won't go there, right? We can look at it and say, hey, this is a community need. Can we make it financially sustainable in the long run? If we can, then we look at putting a base there.
Okay. So, I mean, we started out talking about, hey, there's problems, you're getting paid less, the demand's going up, but you still see opportunity around some of these places, and the opportunity to serve these populations is a big part of where you want to be able to get to.
And we just have to be more careful now, right? I mean, there are areas across our 5 states that need an air ambulance, but if it's, I have to just be very careful about making that decision, because it costs probably $4 or $5 million to stand up a base somewhere, and then it's millions of dollars a year that it takes to just run it, because we operate much like a firehouse. I mean, we're 24/7, 365 at those bases. It's all very fixed costs, and so it just, unfortunately, given the paying, how the payers have positioned themselves, we can't put a base everywhere that it's needed.
Well, and just maybe to get a sense of the complexity, how many aircraft are you guys operating, and how many different types of aircraft?
We're in the middle of kind of a transition right now, but we're close to 60 aircraft, and a mix of helicopters and fixed wing. On the fixed wing side, we operate PC-12 NG aircraft. It's got a big cargo door, and we use those for longer patient transports, or in times of poor weather. And then we've got a number of different helicopters. Our three main helicopters are a Bell 407, a Bell 429, and an Airbus EC-135. And we operate those in different areas based on what the specific aircraft capabilities are, and what the specific needs are in that area.
And the flexibility around crew staffing of those, I imagine, medical staff, you could probably move between those pretty easily, but what about the rest of the staff that are supporting these things? How fungible is that staff that you've got to work with?
Yeah, no, so pilots and mechanics need to have specific training on that specific type of aircraft. The FAA will only allow pilots to be qualified in really 2 aircraft. That's what they like to see at a maximum. And so we like to keep the aircraft kind of the same aircraft in the same places, so that you can have the correct mechanics and the correct pilots. We used to have a single jet that we use for some longer range stuff, but having a one-off of any aircraft, it just adds all the organizational complexity. You have to have specific pilots, specific tooling, specific training, and so having one of anything is never good. And so we really have whittled it down. I think at one point we had 7 different types of helicopters, and we've whittled that down to really 4 now, and one of those types we're transitioning out as they get older. So we'll be down to 3, but.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So reducing that complexity when you can makes a big difference.
Yeah.
All right. So we're on the home stretch of the year here, thinking ahead to 2025. What are some of your hopes for Life Flight for 2025?
Great question. I think just to really continue supporting our communities. I think continue with our low turnover, continue with our employee engagement. It's so important to have a happy workforce. I mean, it's just nice to come to work and people enjoy their job. That's where type of place I want to work, and so that's the type of environment that we want to create. And then just being able to navigate all the financial uncertainties in the healthcare system. Most hospitals are losing money, so how do we navigate a healthcare system that is highly complex, and where payers seem to have a lot of the power? And so we do a very good job of putting a lot of energy towards that and making sure that we get the fair reimbursement that we deserve and people need to keep us in operation. But it takes a concerted effort. So just hopefully we can continue to do that and continue to get some wins there and support our people.
Good deal. Well, thanks a ton, Ben. It was really great to chat a little bit about Life Flight and what you've been doing there.
Yeah, thanks.